Hare Krishna. So we're very fortunate that we have Madana-mohan Prabhu here, and we don't have much time, it's very limited. So we're going to take advantage of his association also. And I'll just read the English translation and the purport. Will you comment on it? Or? Oh, okay. I will read it and then we could say a few words and we'll move it on. And if you have any questions, just ask in between, because otherwise we won't have that time. It's going to be like a quick session. Okay. Sanjaya said, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So I'm reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 74. I'll just read the English translation. Sanjaya said, "Thus I've heard the conversation of two great souls, Krishna and Arjuna. And so wonderful is that message that my hair is standing on end." Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, Dhritarashtra inquired from his secretary Sanjaya what happened on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The entire study was related to the heart of Sanjaya by the grace of his spiritual master Vyas. He thus explained the theme of the battlefield. The conversation was wonderful because such an important conversation between two great souls had never taken place before and would never take place again. It was wonderful because the Supreme Personality of Godhead was speaking about himself and his energies to the living entity. Arjuna, a great devotee of the Lord. If we follow in the footsteps of Arjuna to understand Krishna, then our life will be happy and successful. Sanjaya realized this, and as he began to understand it, he related the conversation to Dhritarashtra. Now it concluded that wherever there is Krishna and Arjuna, there is victory. So it's quite an interesting purport by Srila Prabhupada, and as I was reading it, the first point came to me was that just by hearing, one can reach that ecstatic position where one hair is standing on end. And it's quite amazing just by hearing the philosophy. And hearing is important. When I first joined the Hare Krishna movement, we were doing the Canto 1 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it talks about how by serving great souls who are free from vice, gains the affinity to hear the messages of Vasudeva. So just by hearing. And you can see here that it's talking, and then the second point that I noted here is about the spiritual master. Which is very important. This message comes down, you will see in the next verse, it will be more explicitly explained. But in this verse, it's also making that point that how this knowledge is coming down and it's revealed. So we, by serving people free from vice, we gain the affinity to hear, and then gradually we advance in Krishna consciousness. This hair standing on end is like a esoteric topic. So, but the point is here that you can all experience it. I remember teaching this Bhagavad Gita to two students about 15 years ago. There was just two people, two students. It was Ujjwala and Tamal. They were not initiated, and they were hearing this Bhagavad Gita, but when we finished, came to these verses, they didn't want it to end. And both of them, they were not initiated then, and they took initiation subsequently from Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj. So it reminds me, like about 30 years ago, Mukunda Maharaj came to a program that we held. So about 80 of us in that program, and not one person was initiated. And he said he couldn't believe it. He thought we staged the program. It was in Newlands. It was like an amazing program. And he did the verse 1866, Bhagavad Gita, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. So he told the president was Shruti Kirti that time, and Shruti Kirti was telling the Maharaj that these devotees are doing this all the time, the same things all the time, just like this. They didn't stage it up. It was such an experience he had. And then later, the devotees all took initiation and they became leaders in the society. So we'll stop here, we'll leave it to Madana-mohan because we don't have much time.
We're just getting into it. With... I didn't want Raghunatha Bhatta Prabhu to stop.
Oh. He's a disciple of Mukunda Maharaj. I thought I'll just tell that experience we had. So.
It's a very actually important day today that we are concluding the Bhagavad Gita. At the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, in the previous verse 73 that you read last week, he actually expressed the essence, the sum total of the entire book. Because any book is judged by what it does to the reader. What's the conclusion of it? I don't know about you. I used to read as a kid. I learned reading quite early in my life, and I was intrigued by. It was a series of books about great people of the world, and I would read about scientists and philosophers and political leaders and artists and painters. There was a whole series of it was called The Life of Famous People. And my only interest in those biographies was, as a kid, to look in the final pages of the book and see how these people died. Because actually you measure your life by what happens at the last moment. Somehow I had that understanding that whatever happens to him at the point of death, or before that, leading up to his death or her death, that's the defining moment in their lives. And I should tell you that all those deaths were quite disappointing. People didn't know where they were going. They were in complete darkness, and most of them suffered, or they were in a stage of mental derangement or abandonment or something like that. Very few actually took it as something positive in their life. But Arjuna, when he concluded his study of the Bhagavad Gita from Krishna, he expressed a lesson that he himself imbibed, and he also hands it down to us in the last verse that he speaks in the Bhagavad Gita, Karishye vachanam tava. He says in the previous verse, my Lord Krishna, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory by your mercy. I am now firm and free from doubt and am prepared to act according to your instructions. Karishye vachanam tava means that I am ready to do whatever you tell me to do. That's my decision now. Not because you scared me into submission by showing me the universal form or some other forms, but now it's my choice. Why? Because Krishna, before that, one of the concluding verses, Krishna says, have you understood everything? Has your illusion been dissipated? And the Acharyas explain, Srila Prabhupada explains that Krishna was ready to repeat, if necessary, the entire Bhagavad Gita for Arjuna and keep repeating it as long as it would take for him to arrive at his own deliberate and free, voluntary conclusion. And when I read the Bhagavad Gita for the first time and I read that verse spoken by Krishna, I'm ready to, now you've heard everything from me, now you do as you will, as you wish. Whatever you decide, you can do. All right? And Arjuna says, I've decided, Krishna. I am going to surrender unto you. So this is the kind of God that is easy to love. He's lovable. It's not just to be feared, not to be obeyed mindlessly, not to be worshipped, but to be loved, because he always gives his devotees, or any living entity for that matter, the freedom of choice. And he is also willing to remain one of the choices in life, always present, either in the manifestation of this material world, as he describes himself in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, describing how he can be seen in this world through different vibhutis, or as a personal friend in the heart, sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto, or as someone who is manifested through the mouths of his pure devotees. And Srila Prabhupada explains in one of these purports that we shouldn't think that Arjuna was lucky. He was the lucky one because he could hear Bhagavad Gita from Krishna personally. But I'm not so lucky, because now we have separated ourselves. We are separated from Krishna by 5,000 years and so many thousand kilometers. Prabhupada says no. Anyone who can read the Bhagavad Gita, who reads the Bhagavad Gita these days, can associate with Krishna as if he were personally present on the battlefield and hearing Krishna's own words from his mouth. And there is no difference between this. Hearing the Bhagavad Gita as it has been handed down by Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas, and listening from Krishna, or listening to Krishna directly, sitting or standing in front of him. Just yesterday I had a very inspiring conversation with one devotee who drove me to the function at New Jagannath Puri temple, back and forth, and he was sharing with me the way he became a devotee. Somebody was going to dump his Bhagavad Gita that person owned. He didn't need it, so he wanted to throw it away, but before doing that, he asked that devotee who drove me, I have this book, Bhagavad something, do you want to have it? And he said, yeah, it sounds interesting, let me try and read it. So he didn't want that to be discarded, so he took the book, he tried to read it, it didn't go easy at the first attempt, but then someone else encouraged him, said, you read this book, it will change your life, 100%. And the devotee said, well, that's not possible. Books do not change people's lives, do they? How many books have you read in your... Well, I shouldn't have asked you this question, because your devotee is really spoiled by the experience of your life being changed by reading books, right? That's what we do all the time. But anyhow, that devotee took it as a challenge. He said, no, this book is not going to change my life. Let me try. But because he wanted to prove that person wrong or something, wanted to put his words to test, he started reading the Bhagavad Gita. And guess what? He became a devotee on the spot. Just by reading a few first pages of the Bhagavad Gita, he was completely convinced. And the example he gave, we were discussing it with him, is that you can tell the doctor, no, your medicine is not going to work on my disease. That one pill, how can that little one pill solve or cure me from my illness? Or one match, a light match, cannot burn that house. How can that be? Just a small match. How will that whole house go up in flames because of one match? It's impossible. Prabhupada would sometimes give the example of poison. Just one grain of poison can kill you, but we may think, no, how can is that? It's not going to work. But best not to try. But Bhagavad Gita is of the same caliber, the same category. It acts whether we believe it or don't believe it, whether we accept it or not. If you just read it, get in touch with it, it will make you a participant of that conversation with Krishna and Arjuna, and will lead you to the same result as Arjuna has been led to. Karishya vachanam tava. Okay, Krishna, my illusion has now been removed, and if you tell me to do what I want, I have decided. I want to serve you. That's my decision. And this is what Krishna is looking for. As God, as the God, he could have forced us easily. He could have created so many different spectacular catastrophes in this world. Do you get hail here?
Yeah.
Sometimes you could. How big is that? Small. I saw hail like this large, but he could have created hail storm like with a soccer ball size hails, or he could have created tornadoes, tsunamis all at once, and earthquakes, and fires, and epidemics, and that the big running line on the sky, surrender to me or else. Easy, people will, right? And his picture, Krishna. And then chant Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, and be happy. He could have done that, he can do that, no, but he doesn't do that. He just waits. He creates positive opportunities for us by making us meet his pure devotees and then testing whether we are ready, just like Arjuna has been tested by these verses of the Bhagavad Gita, tested on our behalf. And now Arjuna has concluded his study by saying, okay, Krishna, I am going to do what you tell me to do, and this is my decision. So verse 75, sorry for taking so much of your time for this little preface, but we'll, now because Arjuna has already finished speaking in the verse 73, and now the concluding 5 verses are spoken by Sanjaya, the narrator of the Bhagavad Gita. By the mercy of Vyasa, I have heard these most confidential talks directly from the master of all mysticism, Krishna, who was speaking personally to Arjuna. Purport: Vyasa was the spiritual master of Sanjaya, and Sanjaya admits that it was by Vyasa's mercy that he could understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that no one has to understand Krishna. That means that one has to understand Krishna not directly, but through the medium of the spiritual master. The spiritual master is the transparent medium, although it is not true. It is true that the experience is still direct. This is the mystery of the disciplic succession. When the spiritual master is bona fide, then one can hear Bhagavad Gita directly, as Arjuna heard it. There are many mystics and yogis all over the world, but Krishna is the master of all yoga systems. Krishna's instruction is explicitly stated in Bhagavad Gita: surrender unto Krishna. One who does so is the topmost yogi. This is confirmed in the last verse of the 6th chapter, Yoginam api sarvesham. Narada is the direct disciple of Krishna and the spiritual master of Vyasa. Therefore, Vyasa is as bona fide as Arjuna because he comes in a disciplic succession, and Sanjaya is a direct disciple of Vyasa. Therefore, by the grace of Vyasa, Sanjaya's senses were purified and he could see and hear Krishna directly. One who directly hears Krishna can understand this confidential knowledge. If one does not come to the disciplic succession, he cannot hear Krishna. Therefore, his knowledge is always imperfect, at least as far as understanding of Bhagavad Gita is concerned. In Bhagavad Gita, all the Vedic yoga systems, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga are explained. Krishna is the master of all such mysticism. It is to be understood, however, that as Arjuna was fortunate enough to understand Krishna directly, so by the grace of Vyasa, Sanjaya was also able to hear Krishna directly. Actually, there is no difference between hearing directly. This is the purport I was referring to, actually. Mm-hmm. Actually, there is no difference between hearing directly from Krishna and hearing directly from Krishna via a bona fide spiritual master like Vyasa. The spiritual master is the representative of Vyasadeva also. Therefore, according to the Vedic system, on the birthday of the spiritual master, the disciples conduct the ceremony called Vyasa Puja. I think it's coming up on the 25th. We are celebrating the Vyasa Puja of His Holiness Kadamba Swami Maharaj. Is it correct? And just a few words is that Srila Prabhupada sometimes would compare the spiritual master, he would call him transparent medium, but transparency could be different. Like some of you are wearing glasses. I'm getting to the point that I have to start wearing a pair of glasses because I can understand it.
Transparent vibe.
Yeah, that's transparent medium. I have to squint sometimes at the letters and see if I can read them properly. But this transparency of eyeglasses is something very special. They're transparent, but it's not the only quality they have. What is also there, they have what they call progressive lenses sometimes. You can see far, you can also see closely, and they have different focal strength. They make the closer objects visible something that we cannot see without the glasses. That's the problem I have. Now I cannot see. Like this I can see. Or the faraway objects you also sometimes cannot see, and then you have another focal strength of the lenses that makes faraway objects and the closer objects visible. In the same way, the spiritual master is that kind of transparency or transparent medium. He can make us see Krishna, who is the closest of all closest friends. He is the minute, the smallest of the smallest, right? And by wearing the glasses of the spiritual master who tells us how to see Krishna in everything, then all of a sudden that vision comes to us, and it's a miracle. Like you don't see, then you put on the glasses, you can see clearly everything. Then you take them off, you don't see anything, or see very vaguely. In the same way, Krishna is also, you could say, he is the farthest away from us object of this world of reality. But by putting on the eyes or the eyeglasses of the spiritual master's instructions, we can see Krishna even though he's far away and is not perceivable. But when we see him through that transparent medium, the transcendental telescope and the transcendental microscope, then Krishna becomes, as he himself describes in the Bhagavad Gita, I am the closest, I am the goal, I am the means, I am the closest friend, I am father and the mother and the ability in man. And then we can all of a sudden see Krishna is everywhere. And that's the experience devotees get when they associate with pure devotees respectfully, without even having to take initiation first. Ravindra Sarup Prabhu, not our Ravindra Sarup Prabhu from the Durban temple, but Prabhupada's disciple, he is a very knowledgeable, very learned devotee, a philosopher, one of the most brilliant minds of ISKCON. He wrote many books and articles. He has a PhD in philosophy. And as a student of philosophy, he came to see Prabhupada because he was inquisitive. He wanted to know what this philosophy is about. He was very respectful. When he saw Prabhupada, he spoke with him, and then he spent some time with Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada exchanged with him a few words. He asked him, what do you do? He says, I am a PhD in theology. And Prabhupada told him, well, why don't you prove that Darwin's theory is wrong? And he said, how can I do that? It's a completely different field. Biology is something I don't have anything to do. But interestingly, he said he remembers after the first meeting with Srila Prabhupada, when he walked out of his room, he all of a sudden discovered something very strange in his heart, in his mind. All of a sudden he understood that he now believes that Krishna exists. And not that believes, but somehow he knows, with the same clarity as he knows that he himself exists. Like none of us doubt in our right minds that we exist, right? It's just something that we never doubt, unless we become completely bewildered, clinically, I would say. But he understood all of a sudden, wait a second, Krishna exists. But what changed? Nothing changed. I mean, I didn't do anything for that. I didn't want to believe in Krishna. I didn't make any effort to believe in Krishna. I just came to look at that unusual, very interesting character, Srila Prabhupada. But by just seeing him for a few seconds, all of a sudden that clear understanding of Krishna as reality came into my life. And now I have to live with it. I have to live with it because now it's reality. He became a devotee just like that. And he understood I didn't do anything to do. All I did was come in contact with Srila Prabhupada. And he's not alone in this kind of experience. Many great, brilliant thinkers and philosophers and scientists and independent thinkers, after coming in touch with Srila Prabhupada, had the same transformation. Another one is Vishaka Devi. Vishaka Devi, you know her? She is the wife of Yadubara Prabhu, and both of them, husband and wife, traveled with Srila Prabhupada and captured his lila on camera and also on video camera and photo camera. So many of the pictures we have of Prabhupada and videos were filmed by them. And she was an atheist and feminist, to make it even worse. Atheist and feminist, and she was pursuing her career. She was very educated, very independent-minded, and she didn't want to believe anything. She had enough of that in her Jewish upbringing. I'm not going to bow down to anyone. I'm going to accept anyone for just on faith. But then she met Srila Prabhupada and everything changed in a few seconds. How does it work? Prabhupada explains here. By being in association with a pure devotee, by looking through his clear, transparent heart at Krishna and taking advantage of his focal strength, that image of Krishna becomes very clearly perceived by our spiritual eyes that we receive from the spiritual master. Chakudan Dila Jai Janmi Janmi Prabhu say. That's why we sing every morning in Prabhupada's Guru Puja. You give us the eyes to see something that without those eyes we won't be able to see. So this is verse 75. Now we can move on to verse 76.
76. Oh, okay.
Do you want me to hold it?
No, I can hold it. Yeah, that's fine. Verse 76. O King, as I repeatedly recall this wondrous and holy dialogues between Krishna and Arjuna, I take pleasure being thrilled at every moment. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The understanding of Bhagavad Gita is so transcendental that anyone who becomes conversant with the topics of Arjuna and Krishna becomes righteous, and he cannot forget such talks. This is the transcendental position of spiritual life. In other words, one who hears the Gita from the right source, directly from Krishna, attains full Krishna consciousness. The result of Krishna consciousness is that one becomes increasingly enlightened and he enjoys life with a thrill.
With a thrill.
Not only for some time, but every moment.
Thrilled every moment.
Yeah, thrill every moment. Wonderful short verse. And I was just thinking, you're talking about Krishna is the source, but the spiritual master is the channel. It's not the actual source. It's the clear channel that transmits the knowledge that he heard from the source. And then because you're hearing from Krishna, the person is enlivened. And when one hears from the person who heard it from the spiritual master, then he becomes enlivened. And it's a chain. This knowledge is very powerful. And there's a thrill. But sometimes we can't even take out Bhagavad Gita and read. So it's not so much a thrill for us. Because we're not in that category, not for certain, but at every moment. This is like an advanced stage of Krishna consciousness, where every moment you are, happy in Krishna consciousness, and you're feeling that thrill. But do we really feel that? I'm asking. At every moment,
we have some thrill.
Some feeling, but
some thrill.
Some thrill.
Some thrill. It's
not
but not necessarily Bhagavad Gita, right?
Not Bhagavad Gita. But not Bhagavad Gita.
Everyone has a thrill in life, right?
It's such a amazing. Like I remember, we engaged one attorney to on a radio program. We had permission to broadcast on the radio every week for a few hours. So this person was like, he was into like religion and he studied, but not like not Bhagavad Gita, some other things he studied. And what he did, he took the Maharaj's books and he read it, and Maharaj was talking about Krishna and in a very different way, Bhakti Tirtha Swami. And he stayed awake the whole night till the next morning, till the interview. He read the book. He read the book and then he was asking questions. I just couldn't believe it because he knew the whole book.
He got the thrill.
He got the thrill. And it was amazing. It was just so amazing that, and Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj couldn't believe that this person knew the whole, actually, whatever was there. So true, just by associating with devotees like that. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, I printed many of his books. I have rights to print it, and I'm printing and selling these books to people, or sending it to other parts of Africa. So like this, it's, because he was coming in that chain of disciplic succession also, there was some taste there. But the thrill of, and for some time, but at every moment, that's like a high stage of Krishna consciousness. When you do nectar of devotion, you can read more about it, how a pure devotee or somebody doesn't waste time. So we'll do the next one, I think.
Thank you.
I think, 7:57. Yeah, just take a few minutes
It
more.
was one of the reasons, actually the main reason that I asked Prabhuji, Raghunatha Bhatta Prabhu to participate, because I don't know about you, but I get a lot of thrill when I sit side by side with someone like that.
No.
And wait, it's not like a one-man show, but no, honestly, it's not just because of some emotional support thing, but it's a magic when you get together with a like-minded devotee and you start discussing. Then the time stops somehow. Then you don't feel like stopping. You don't feel like putting down the book. Somehow their experience, their Krishna consciousness enriches yours, and not by way of adding, but by way of multiplying. And that's what the Bhagavatam also says. And the Bhagavad Gita says, Krishna speaks about such experiences between his devotees. He says, Tesham satata
10:10.
10:9. He says.
10:9.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Matah sarvam parvatati matva bhajantyam buddha bhava samanvitaha machitam adgata prana. That's the verse. Machitam adgata prana bodhayantah parasparam kathayantash chamam nityam tushyanti charamanti. So he says, these are the four most important verses of the Bhagavad Gita we hear, the seed verses, because in them Krishna explains himself in just half a verse. It's 10:8, just 2 lines, or 1 line actually, because it's written like that. 1 line is about him, aham sarvasya prabhava matah sarvam pravartate. That's it. That's all about me. Krishna says, I'm the source of everything rests on me, and I set everything in motion. But then he starts speaking about his devotees for the rest of the 4 verses. Iti matva bhajanti mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. And then devotees who understand me like that, they become enlivened, buddha bhava samanvitaha. And what do? They get together and they start discussing about me, and there is no end to it, because when they start discussing, even things which might appear to be very simple, but when they share their experience with each other, that stops being theoretical, becomes a lived practice, a lived experience, and there is no end to the thrill they can feel from it, sharing these experiences with each other. And he says, Tushyanticha ramanticha, they feel nourished, they feel enlivened, ramanti, they feel blissful by kathayanta chamam nityam, by speaking about me and enlivening one another. And then he explains what he does in exchange for such discussions. He says, and then looking at these devotees who feel thrilled, getting together and discussing me, I also participate. How do I participate? Tisham, to those satata yuktanam who always get together at nama-hattas or bhakti vrikshas or whatever, come to programs or just read books with some of their friends in their leisure time. Tesham, to those who satata yuktanam always do that, always means regularly. Bhajatam priti purvakam, who feel happiness in that kind of engagement. Dadami buddhi yogam tam, I give them the intelligence by which they can always connect everything in their lives with me. Prabhuji, Raghunatha Bhatta Prabhu has just said that it's an advanced stage of Krishna consciousness to be always thrilled, feeling the thrill at every moment. But Krishna says, I give it this ability in exchange for proper association. When association with devotees becomes our urge, something we cannot live without. And we always look for an opportunity. Just like Acharya Prabhu. I just spoke with him this night. Just before coming here, we sat down together and discussed something. And he shared with me how one devotee asked him, could you please explain the Bhagavatam, that there's such and such verse? And Acharya Prabhu explained it once and twice, and now before he knew, it ended up being a nama-hatta online. And every week, or even every week, they get together and discuss the Bhagavatam with devotees from all over the world. Some from Germany, some from Poland, some from Russia, some from Ukraine. And they all get together electronically. I remember because when he came from the Harinam, remember the Harinam we went together with Acharyavan Prabhu? You came back at 7 o'clock sharp, right? And then Acharyavan Prabhu ran up to the second floor of that building, and I asked him something, and I could see that he was in a hurry. And I said, what's that? I said, I have Bhagavatam, we have to start discussing Bhagavatam soon, like that. And I could see that was very important for him. And that creates life in devotees, spiritual lives. This is what brings everything to life. Proper association. This is what Krishna speaks about. Here in the 77th verse, he says, Arjuna, not Krishna, Sanjaya says, O king, as I remember the wonderful form of Krishna, I'm struck with wonder more and more, and I rejoice again and again. In the previous verse, he says, Rajan, samsmritya samspritya, samvadan ima. In the first verse that we read tonight, he says, I've heard the conversation of the great souls, wonderful message, I was thrilled to hear it. Next verse, he says, and I remember this very confidential talk, and I now understand that this confidential talk became even more confidential because it grew out of relationship with Krishna and Arjuna, between these two great, very intimate friends. It's a separate topic, how intimate their friendship was. And then, because of that, I was privy to that discussion. I remember this dialogue again and again. And by my remembering again and again this dialogue, now I can also remember the form of Krishna again and again. So it comes in stages. First we read it at least once and make it a regular affair. Then it develops into smaranam. We can remember the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita. And that smaranam grows into meditation, into dhyana on Krishna's form. And then Krishna manifests himself as a person with whom you also have an eternal relationship. So Srila Prabhupada explains in his purport, it appears that Sanjaya also, by the grace of Vyasa, could see the universal form Krishna exhibited to Arjuna. It is, of course, said that Lord Krishna had never exhibited such a form before. It was exhibited to Arjuna only. Yet some great devotees could also see the universal form of Krishna when it was shown to Arjuna, and Vyasa was one of them. He is one of the great devotees of the Lord, and he is considered to be a powerful incarnation of Krishna. Vyasa disclosed this to his disciple Sanjaya, who remembered that wonderful form of Krishna exhibited to Arjuna and enjoyed it repeatedly. In the same way, Srila Prabhupada says that the spiritual master is not the body. He is not the body. It's not that we have a class of spiritual masters we have to choose this guidance from, like a caste or some category. Whoever is transparent enough, and through whoever we read or understand the Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, whoever brings our spiritual life to life, whoever actually gives us that sense of direct touch with Krishna and his transcendental reality, he or she are spiritual masters. That's how a spiritual master is found or defined, right? So now the last verse, we can split the commentary in halves if you like. We can read the first 3 paragraphs and I can read the last 3 paragraphs.
Okay. Well, the last text, 1878, was text 78 in the 18th chapter. Wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power and morality. That is my opinion. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Bhagavad Gita began with an inquiry of Dhritarashtra. He was hopeful of the victory of his sons, assisted by great warriors like Bhishma, Drona and Karna. He was hopeful that the victory would be on his side. But after describing the scene on the battlefield, Sanjaya told the king, "You are thinking of victory, but my opinion is that where Krishna and Arjuna are present, there will be all good fortune." He directly confirmed that Dhritarashtra could not expect victory for his side. Victory was certain for the side of Arjuna, because Krishna was there. Krishna's acceptance of the post of charioteer for Arjuna was an exhibition of another opulence. Krishna is full of all opulences. And renunciation is one of them. There are many instances of such renunciation, for Krishna is also the master of renunciation. The fight was actually between Duryodhana and Yudhishthira. Arjuna was fighting on behalf of his elder brother, Yudhishthira, because Krishna and Arjuna were on the side of Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira's victory was certain. The battle was to decide who would rule the world, and Sanjaya predicted that the power would be transferred to Yudhishthira. It is also predicted here that Yudhishthira, after gaining victory in the battle, would flourish more and more, because not only was he righteous and pious, but he was also a strict moralist. He never spoke a lie during his life. Stop there. One more. There are many less intelligent persons who take Bhagavad Gita to be a discussion of topics between two friends on a battlefield. But such a book cannot be scripture. Some may protest that Krishna incited Arjuna to fight, which is immoral, but the reality of the situation is clearly stated. Bhagavad Gita is the supreme instruction in morality. The supreme instruction of morality is stated in the 9th chapter, in the 34th verse, Man mane bhava mad bhakto. One must become a devotee of Krishna, and the essence of all religion is to surrender unto Krishna. Sarva dharman parityaja, mam ekam sharanam vraja. The instructions of Bhagavad Gita constitute the supreme process of religion and morality. All other processes may be purifying and may lead to this process, but the last instruction of the Gita is the last word in all morality and religion. Surrender unto Krishna. This is the verdict of the 18th chapter. So, you can...
From Bhagavad Gita we can understand that to realize oneself by philosophical speculation and by meditation is one process, but to fully surrender unto Krishna is the highest perfection. This is the essence of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. The path of regulative principles according to the orders of social life and according to the different courses of religion may be a confidential path of knowledge, but although the rituals of religion are confidential, meditation and cultivation of knowledge are still more confidential. After surrender unto Krishna in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, surrender unto Krishna in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness is the most confidential instruction. That is the essence of the 18th chapter. Another feature of Bhagavad Gita is that the actual truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. The absolute truth is realized in three features: impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and ultimately the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Perfect knowledge of the absolute truth means perfect knowledge of Krishna. If one understands Krishna, then all the departments of knowledge are part and parcel of that understanding. Krishna is transcendental, for he is always situated in his internal potency. The living entities are manifested of his energy and are divided into two categories: eternally conditioned and eternally liberated. Such living entities are innumerable, and they are considered fundamental parts of Krishna. Material energy is manifested into 24 divisions. The creation is affected by eternal time, and it is created and dissolved by external energy. The manifestation of the cosmic world repeatedly becomes visible and invisible. This is Prabhupada's genius here, because look at how he carefully wrote this. We're still 2 paragraphs more to go, but he wrote these purports, even though the Acharyas wrote small purports, like this small. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his purport on this verse, says, actually, I wrote very short purports on the 5 concluding verses of the Bhagavad Gita, but a rat came and stole my purport. And as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, a carrier of Ganesh, a rat, mouse, came and stole what I wrote on these purports? And he said, I don't care. I wrote something very insignificant. Let Bhagavad Gita shine with its own glory. And he doesn't write anything else. But Srila Prabhupada wrote a very substantial commentary, just for those people who, like I did, looking at the end of the book, how it all ends. And for somebody like me, who of you also do the same thing sometimes when you read book from the back, from the final last page of the magazine, look at the last page of the magazine to see what's there. For those impatient ones, if you look at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, and Prabhupada in his last commentary reproduces the entire philosophy. Even if you read just one purport on the last verse, you'll get the entire Bhagavad Gita. Now you have everything here. Material energy, the spiritual energy, the two categories of living entities, 24 elements, repeated creation of the existence, visible and invisible manifestations. Everything is just in one or two paragraphs, very perfectly summarized by Srila Prabhupada. And also Prabhupada went through the same experience. Remember when he wrote his own purport on the Bhagavad Gita, the commentary? Maybe some other rat came and stole the entire manuscript from America. They broke into his apartment and stole the typewriter and the manuscript. And Prabhupada had to start from scratch. Everything. How many of you, after compiling a message to someone and you hit the wrong button and disappears, and oh no, I'm going to write it again. No way, just a short message, right? But he had to write the entire book. And he didn't feel discouraged, he started over again. That's what you would call being thrilled by the Bhagavad Gita. You don't mind doing it again. If you are thrilled about something, you'll never mind doing it over again. You have that thrill in life about something? I won't ask you what that is. But there must be something in our lives that makes us thrilled. Be it relationships or some pursuits or some achievements or some, maybe, I don't want to say computer game. People waste so much time on different kind of thrills. But Prabhupada was in a different, transcendental type of thrill. And even if that second manuscript were lost, he would have probably started over again without blinking his eye. So we'll conclude the last two paragraphs. The Bhagavad Gita, 5 principal subject matters have been discussed. And Prabhupada, again, he finishes the book with what he started it with. Because in the very beginning, the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita, in preface, he describes, forward, all these philosophical categories. So it's nicely sandwiched by philosophy on both sides. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, material nature, the living entities, eternal time, and all kinds of activities, karma. All is dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. All conceptions of the Absolute Truth, impersonal, Brahman, localized Paramatma, and other transcendental conception exist within the category of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although superficially the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entity, material nature, and time appear to be different, nothing is different from the Supreme. But the Supreme is always different from everything. Now you have it, Achinti Beda Beda Tattva. Lord Chaitanya's philosophy is that of inconceivable oneness and difference. This system of philosophy constitutes perfect knowledge of the Absolute Truth. And then Prabhupada concludes. The living entity, and please pay attention to how Prabhupada concludes the concluding words on the Bhagavad Gita, the very last expression. And I'll ask you the question. So here, please don't think you'll get away with just listening tonight. I'll ask you a question, a very important question on the last sentence of the last paragraph of the purport. The living entity is in his original position as pure spirit. He is just an atomic particle of the Supreme Spirit. Thus, Lord Krishna may be compared to the sun and the living entities to sunshine. Because the living entities are the marginal energy of Krishna, they have a tendency to be in contact either with the material energy or with the spiritual energy. In other words, the living entity is situated between the two energies of the Lord, and because he belongs to the supreme energy of the Lord, he has a particle of independence. By proper use of that independence, he comes under the direct order of Krishna. Thus, he attains his normal condition in the pleasure-giving potency. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 18th chapter of his of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in a matter of its conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. So what does it tell you? The very last sentence. Let's read it again. Thus he attains his normal condition in the pleasure-giving potency.
That's a good question.
Any answers? What does it tell you? You have just now finished, you have become scholars, certified scholars of the Bhagavad Gita. So what does it tell you, the very last sentence? Does it ring anything familiar?
Pleasure-giving potency.
Pleasure-giving potency, normal condition and pleasure-giving potency. How does it taste like? What does it sound like to you? Shall I call on you, or you would like to volunteer? Or shall we volunteer, some of you?
Yeah, they should.
Maybe I'll give the wrong answer. I'm saying maybe I'll give a wrong answer.
Please,
I'm saying
Prabhu.
if Srila Prabhupada is saying that he attains his normal condition in the pleasure-giving potency, I would understand it to be that in the present moment we are, for me, abnormal, and seeking pleasure where we're not going to get fulfillment. You know, because of the mindless independence that we have. But maybe someone else will have a different opinion.
Did everyone hear, has everyone heard the answer by Raghunatha Prabhu? That now we are in an abnormal position, in a potency that doesn't give us pleasure. It's misery-given potency, and the position is abnormal. Was it abnormal? I think we discussed at the Radha Yatra. It's like the fish in an artificial. Everything is nice. The beach, the sun, the sand, the people, the weather, the air, the seagulls. Everything is fine. What's missing is it's just that it's not our normal position because we're fish. And that's why we suffer on that beach where everyone else enjoys. But any other comments on that last verse, on last sentence of the purport? Acharyavan Prabhu, what does you agree? You better do. What does it? Eyesight, Prabhu. Eyesight, pardon? Is correct? Eyesight.
Everything.
Huh?
You said everything.
What do you think? What does it mean? What does it mean to you?
The positive side is if we can use the infinitesimal independence that we have, we can. There's the possibility and the surety from the Acharya that we can experience this pleasurable state of consciousness and being.
Which is natural.
Which is,
And we shouldn't be afraid of being happy. Once Prabhupada asked a question at one of the programs, 1967 or 68 in Buffalo, and he asked the audience after giving a class, he said, who of you wants to be happy? And devotees felt some trick in that question, and nobody wanted to venture with a hand raised. And Prabhupada repeated the question, does any of you want to be happy? And they didn't want to know. You go, you raise your hand, you want to be happy, you. like that. And then if he asked the question for the third time, and someone very timidly raised his hand from the back of, probably was a newcomer, a new devotee, and Prabhupada said, thank you very much. Because that's what we want to do. We don't want them to be happy, we want you to be happy. It's just that you don't know how to be happy. That's the problem. So you're seeking pleasure, happiness, and something that is not capable of giving that to you in sufficient quantity. Do any of the ladies want to? Any of the three ladies present here? Do you want to venture with not just an answer, because it's not that a right or wrong answer, we're just thinking out loud. What does it bring to you? This is how you conclude the Bhagavad Gita. This is the last word Prabhupada wrote. It should have some meaning to us. Not just like whips, when people crack whips, and then that last bit of that whip creates the loudest sound. Like they herd cows and they use those whips to create sounds, very loud sounds, right? So that's the last bit of Prabhupada's purport. Should create some very strong impact on us. What does it say? No, please don't feel obliged. You don't feel like saying no, don't say.
They're shy sometimes. Sometimes they're shy also to speak,
It's one
Generally.
To me, it was a bit tricky, this question, the way I formulated is that this leads you to read the Bhagavatam. Because Bhagavatam is the abode of pleasure-giving potency, Krishna's internal energy. That leads you, after having developed invoked faith or taste about Krishna, now you feel like just like Arjuna, like Sanjaya, after he's hearing he was like a relay station, relaying the Bhagavad Gita, but by going through Sanjaya, the Bhagavad Gita also purified him, and now he became enthralled in the Bhagavad Gita and in meditation on Krishna. In the same way, the success of our reading the Bhagavad Gita is measured by how much we feel eager to actually take it as a natural engagement for us to read about Krishna every single day from sources that are created by his internal pleasure-giving potency, which is the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is Krishna's form. Right? And from the beginning till the end and everything in the middle, it's all Nigama kalpa taror galitam palam sukamukhadam ritadrava samyutam pibata Bhagavatam rasamala. Vyasadeva, the one who wrote the Bhagavad Gita, gave it to Sanjay. He says, there is no need to read any other books except the Bhagavatam, read it. And you'll be always happy, blissful and sheltered under that internal pleasure-giving potency. And it will feel very natural. And as natural as reading or hearing the Bhagavatam will be the transition to the next existence, next life. It will happen even before we die. It's just like that, natural. We close our eyes here and open there and see, oh, I'm with Krishna, immediately. Prabhupada says, it's not my words. Like that. But then he says, please do not spoil anything. Just do not spoil anything. I've given you a perfect program. Just take advantage of that and continue reading the Bhagavatam in association of devotees. This is the internal pleasure-giving potency, and we have to feel very natural in that engagement and very unnatural having no connection with it. That's the test of us reading and understanding the Bhagavad Gita properly.
So Madana-mohan Prabhu is a scholar, you can see. He's very learned and wonderful. Come from Russia? Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj always wanted to take me to Russia. Many times he told me I must come. But now I don't think so I can go. Or maybe at some point in the future. But I was just thinking of one point that when we're reading about the impersonal Brahman and the three features of the Absolute Truth. And I remember one person he's coming for the last 40 years. 40 years. And he's attached to the impersonal Brahman, which is, like partial attraction to Krishna. And then later when I was reading the Bhagavatam, in the 4th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he says, and generally our understanding, the person falls down from that position. But there is a small percentage of the chance to go from there back to Godhead. Like 99.9% Prabhupada says, the person falls down. But there's a small percentage that he can go from that point, even back to Godhead. So, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Shall we conclude here? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Raghunatha Bhatta Prabhu.